Think about everything you learned in history class. Egypt, Mesopotamia, Rome, maybe a Greek philosopher or two. Here's the strange part. Anatomically modern humans have existed for over 300,000 years, but everything we call history covers only the last 5,000. That's less than 2% of our story. So what happened during the other 98%? Honestly, we don't fully know. There's no writing, no cities, no kingdoms to study. Just tools, bones, and a few mysteries carved into cave walls. This is deep time, a scale so vast that entire civilizations rise and fall like a blink within it. And a person living 200,000 years ago had a brain exactly like yours, the same capacity for language, love, and curiosity. They weren't primitive. They were us, just living before any of the things we take for granted existed. They were raising children, falling in love, making art, staring at the same stars, wondering what it all meant. School treats prehistory as a vague blur before the real story starts. But we spend weeks on the Egyptian pyramids, 4,500 years old, and barely a class period on cave paintings created 40,000 years ago. So sophisticated that when discovered, scientists refused to believe ancient people had made them.
The people we're talking about aren't some separate species. They're your ancestors, repeated about 10,000 times. They crossed oceans without modern boats, survived ice ages, performed surgery 15,000 years ago, ran trade networks spanning thousands of miles. And archaeologists suspect we've only recovered a tiny fraction of what once existed. Wood rotted, coastlines drowned, whole chapters of human achievement erased by time. What survives is like a few pages torn from a book of thousands of volumes. But even those fragments can change how we understand what it means to be human.
Our ancestors shared the planet with at least 4 other human species. Neanderthals held Europe and Western Asia, making sophisticated tools and burying their dead. Denisovans spread across Asia. We know them mostly through DNA, since modern populations from Tibet to New Guinea still carry their genes. There was Homo naledi in South Africa, the tiny hobbits of Homo floresiensis in Indonesia, and Homo luzonensis in the Philippines. All had large brains, made tools, likely had language. Our ancestors met them, competed with them, sometimes fought, and sometimes had children with them. Why did only Homo sapiens survive? It wasn't raw intelligence. Neanderthals had bigger brains. Maybe it was larger, more flexible social networks. Maybe more advanced language. Maybe, humbling as it sounds, simple luck. What's certain is that by 70,000 years ago, something shifted. A sudden explosion of elaborate tools, trade, music, art, and burial ritual. Some call it a cognitive revolution, though the hardware had likely been there all along. Something simply unlocked it. Forget the grunting caveman. Drop an infant from 50,000 years ago into a modern family, and they'd grow up indistinguishable from anyone else. In many ways, they were better suited to their world than we are to ours. You'd wake with the sunrise, sleep broken into segments rather than one continuous block. That's the natural pattern.
The work itself demanded real expertise. Gathering required knowing hundreds of plant species, which parts were edible, when, how to detoxify the dangerous ones. Hunting required tracking, patience, cooperation, and an intimate understanding of animal behavior. This was applied science, just never written down. And the health data is striking. Hunter-gatherer skeletons show less tooth decay and disease than early farmers, and greater average height, a height that didn't recover until the 20th century. Their bands of 20 to 50 people were remarkably egalitarian, not from some noble philosophy, but because constant movement made hoarding wealth or power nearly impossible. Children were raised communally, alloparenting, by the whole group, not just parents. And their plant medicine was real pharmacology. Willow bark for pain, molds with antibiotic properties, precise knowledge passed down through practice. In a cave in southwestern France called Lascaux, painted horses and bulls seem to move by torchlight. It's 17,000 years old. But Chauvet Cave, also in
Portable art flourished too. Carved ivory figurines, decorated tools, and bone flutes dating back roughly 40,000 years, crafted precisely enough to play a musical scale. 20,000 years ago, ice sheets buried much of the northern hemisphere. Yet humans not only survived, they thrived, inventing tailored, layered clothing sewn with fine bone needles, and building houses out of mammoth bones where no timber grew. One site in Ukraine used bones from at least 95 mammoths. Inside, they managed fires fueled by bone, engineered for heat and ventilation. Hunting megafauna required coordinated group strategy, planned kill zones, and total resource use. Nothing wasted. Populations still faced brutal bottlenecks, but survived because small, dispersed groups linked by trade and kinship meant no single disaster could wipe everyone out. As sea levels dropped, land bridges opened new territory. The corridor between Asia and North America, the link between Australia and New Guinea, and people migrated relentlessly, adapting to every environment they found. Around 60,000 years ago,
roughly 100,000 years ago, in a cave in what's now Iraq, someone appears to have placed flowers around a grave. Neanderthal burials in Israel, dated to around 130,000 years ago, show bodies deliberately positioned. Red ochre appears in graves worldwide, alongside tools and jewelry left for the dead, suggesting a belief that death wasn't an ending. This points to animism, a worldview in which everything, rivers, animals, stones, held consciousness and relationship. Shamanic figures, evidenced in cave art blending human and animal features, may have used trance, drumming, and psychoactive plants to access other states of experience. Then, 11,600 years ago, hunter-gatherers built Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, massive carved stone pillars arranged in circles, predating the pyramids by 7,000 years, built by people who hadn't yet settled into farming villages. Whatever drove that effort, it wasn't survival, it was belief. Flint knapping demanded reading stone like a text, angle,
It wasn't obviously better. Farmer skeletons often show more malnutrition and harder physical wear than hunter-gatherers before them. But farming produced surplus, and surplus meant more children survived, so populations grew regardless of individual hardship. Settlements like Jericho and Çatalhöyük show permanent mud brick housing, trade, and the first stirrings of specialization, and eventually hierarchy. Surplus meant some could stop farming altogether. Potters, priests, rulers. Around 5,000 years ago, tally marks in Mesopotamia evolved into cuneiform writing, and prehistory, at last, gave way to history. Not everyone chose this path. Many groups kept the older, more mobile way of life well into recorded history. The brain you carry today is a Paleolithic brain, tuned across hundreds of thousands of years for small groups, open landscapes, and immediate threats. Now dropped into cities, screens, and constant noise. That mismatch explains a lot. Why isolation feels like danger. Why notifications trigger the same alarm systems once reserved for predators.
For nearly all of human history, no one slept alone or lived without a surrounding band. Our ancestors also lived for tens of thousands of years without exhausting the ecosystems that sustain them, managing land through fire, migration, and restraint. Knowledge many indigenous communities still carry today as a living bridge to that deep past. Everything you consider history is a sliver, perhaps 5% of the full human story. The rest lives in memory, instinct, and unwritten survival.